Back in 1914, something happened in the transportation industry that revolutionized the way we travel. And what launched that revolution was the first successful trial run of something called autopilot. It was designed by an American pilot named Lawrence Spurry. And it was thought to be important. The idea was if the plane could somehow fly itself, even for a few minutes, that would enable the pilot to concentrate on navigation and dropping bombs, which was important, as you can imagine, during World War I, and it's continued to be important to our military. And the first autopilot was successful in 1914. As I said, by 1915, it had become pretty common. Today, you get on an airplane and the pilot takes off and the plane engages the autopilot feature. And for the most part, the plane pretty much flies itself. That's what most of us are used to today. You may never thought about this, but the truth is that most of us spend a majority of our day on autopilot. A few years ago, Duke University did a study. They found that anywhere from 40 to 50% of what we do during the day is just sort of routine. We don't even think about doing it. It's as if we're living our days on autopilot. We get up, we go through our morning routine without thinking about it. We get dressed without thinking about it. We get in the car, we drive to work, or maybe you hit the drive-through. You go through much of your work day, and you're not really thinking about what you're doing. You're just sort of on autopilot. You go home at night, you've got a routine you go through, you eat dinner, maybe you sit on the couch, you're flipping through Netflix, maybe you read, then you go to bed, and as much as half of your day has been spent doing things that you didn't even really think about. And that can either work for you or it can work against you. The thing about autopilot is that it only works properly if you feed the computer the right information. And depending on what you're taking in on a daily basis, depending on whether you've developed some good habits or some negative habits, autopilot can either lead you in the right direction or it can send you somewhere that you don't want to go. A few years ago, I read a book by a guy named Charles Duhigg, and he talks about habits and the power of habits. And in particular, he talks about what he calls keystone habits. And by his definition, a keystone habit is a habit that leads to a chain reaction of positive events in your life. One example he uses is the example of exercise. You get into the habit of spending 20, 30, 45 minutes a day exercising your body, and that leads to a chain reaction of events. You feel better, so you're in a better mood, and you're more productive at work, you're more fun to be around at home, so your relationships deepen, and all of that started because you built the habit of working out. Another habit that you've heard a lot of talk about in recent years is the power of families eating dinner together. There's something that happens around the table when people from a family eat together. They converse with one another, so their relationships deepen. It's a chance to decompress from the day, no matter what we've been through. It's been said that children that eat dinner with their parents have better homework skills, higher grades, greater emotional control, and more confidence. And again, all of that's just sort of a chain reaction that starts when you make the decision that you're going to eat dinner together as a family. As you go through your spiritual life, there's several keystone habits that we talk about. Prayer is important, worship is important, but there's one habit in particular that I want to encourage you to begin today, if you haven't already begun, or to continue, maybe even take to the next level of your life, depending on your past experience. And that's the habit of reading the Bible daily. Now, I'll admit, I've never been much of a runner. I like to jog every once in a while, but I don't take it real seriously. But if you talk to people that have developed the habit of running in their life, it's become part of what they do, even when they're on autopilot, one of the things they'll often tell you is that they did not enjoy running at first. Maybe they just ran half a mile the first day, but they stuck with it, they continued. Now it's become something that they really look forward to. They schedule their lives around these extended runs. Even though it was something they didn't like at the beginning, it's something that's become a part of their life, and it's created this chain reaction of positive events. The same thing is true when you read the Bible. Sometimes you start to read the scriptures, and it doesn't really taste all that good as it's going down, to use an analogy. Sometimes you read it and you're not sure what it's saying, but if you'll stick with it and you'll build that habit over time, it can become something that starts a chain reaction of positive events in your life. Sometimes it starts with one verse, and then you read one verse a day for a while. Then you build up to 2 verses. Then you go to 3 and 4, maybe even memorize 1 verse a week. And before you know it, you're reading entire chapters of the Bible. You're reading entire sections of the Bible. And it starts a chain reaction of positive events in your life. One of the things that I'm going to do this month, and since this is being filmed on September 1st, and you may be watching it later in the week, I want to encourage you to read 1 proverb a day. When you turn to the book of Proverbs, it was written and collected by a guy named Solomon. It's really an anthology of sayings that were either authored by Solomon or collected by Solomon. The Bible says was the wisest man who ever lived. And you go through, it talks about all sorts of important issues. It talks about how to navigate relationships, how to handle your finances, how to administer justice, and all the things that make up so much of your life. And if you'll just read 1 chapter from the book of Proverbs every day for a month, when you get to the end of that month, you'll have read what the wisest man who ever lived had to say about the most important issues in your life. I want you to listen to how Solomon begins this. He says, "The Proverbs of Solomon, son of David, king of Israel, for gaining wisdom and instruction, for understanding words of insight, for receiving instruction in prudent behavior, doing what is right and just and fair, for giving prudence to those who are simple, knowledge and discretion to the young. Let the wise listen and add to their learning, and let the discerning give guidance, for understanding proverbs, the parables, the sayings, and riddles of the wise. The fear of the Lord is the beginning of knowledge, but fools despise wisdom and instruction." Autopilot only works if you feed the computer the right information. And much of what we hear throughout our normal days is misinformation, it's wrong information, sometimes it's fake news, at best it's negative in tone. And if you want your life to get to the place that you'd like it to be at, then you're going to need to feed the computer the right information. That starts with feeding it Scripture.